Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm very excited to be giving this keynote speech for SNTA 2020. Before I go talk about web privacy, I want to introduce myself. My name is Eric Chantin. I'm an assistant professor in computer science at Loyola University in Chicago. And today I'm going to talk to you about what web privacy will look like in the future, and also what has happened in the past few years regarding web privacy. So before we go on, I want to ask you all a question. What does privacy mean to you? So I want to give you a couple of minutes to think about it. So if you need to pause the video before you keep going, feel free to do that. Or if you already know what privacy means, you probably something's already jumping out at you. Okay, so I hope you've thought of some things. I'm going to guess that what you thought about is more about personal privacy. So things like your name, social security number, ID, phone number, date of birth, gender, and so on. But also what you might think about your privacy will be where you work, where you live, where you go eat, where you go to the gym. Also the things you buy, so um, if you buy if you like buying clothes, or maybe you like buying sports equipment. So if you like buying sports equipment, you're probably an athlete, or you like playing sports. So what you do, so whether you're teaching, you're giving a talk, like now I'm giving a recorded talk online. Also who you talk to as well, so who your family members might be, who your friends might be, where they are, and all of that. Right, so that's personal privacy. Then I'm going to mirror back to web privacy, and you can see it's very similar on the web. What you buy can also be, you might also want that to be private. Things you do on the web, so the websites you visit, the things you type in, think of the searches that you're looking for, whether it's for research or for just personal things. Also where you are, right? So on the web, you can be at home, at work, and also your computer and web browser sends a lot of information to every website out there. So they do know a bit about you. It's not as, you might think it's not as unique as your name or social security number, but as we're going to see later on, it's pretty unique. And also who you communicate with, right? So looking back in hindsight, right, about privacy, you probably heard of some of those stories, or maybe you have not. So, but I'm just going to go through them. Uh, Lately, there's been a lot of news about baby cam, ring cameras, or cameras in general getting hacked. So this does not really have anything to do with privacy in the way they got hacked, in the sense that it was likely, maybe people using weak passwords or reusing passwords. But the fact that a stranger can look at your kids and talking to them through the camera, I think we all agree is a violation of privacy. And then if you look back a few years ago, in 2012, around 2012, Target was already predicting that girl was pregnant before her parents knew she was pregnant. So that was based on what she was buying. Right. And then there's been a lot of privacy breaches. Think of the US Office of Personal Management, Equifax, Target, Marriott, and so on, Yahoo, right? So all these companies collect a lot of information about you. And then when they get hacked, all that information gets leaked. So if you think that Target, based on your purchases, Target can predict what whether you're pregnant or maybe what you're going to buy next. If all that information gets leaked out, right? So then the person who gets that information can do the same prediction. So the target hack was slightly different, was in the data set, but it was just an example to get you to think that, if a company can do all that, then when the data gets leaked, the hacker can also do all the data collection and prediction as well. Right, so Equifax collects enough information about us, about our credit cards, jobs, addresses, where we live, salary information, and so on. And all this is collected without our knowledge. Right, so just when we apply for a new credit card, we give our name, social security number, mailing address, and all this gets sent to Equifax without us opting in. Right, so the point is, all this can be privacy leakage, and also when you browse the web, you probably get advertisements. Right? Even if you have an ad blocker on, some ad blockers allow certain advertisements, so you probably still get some. And to advertise to you, right? So the point of advertisement is that it's going to be something you are interested in. Right. So there's no point in advertising, things like, say, if you're a senior, you probably seen advertisement like life alert. So when you fall down, you press a button, they come help you. If your audience are, say, millennials or 20 years old, for example, there's no point in advertising that life alert equipment to them because they're probably not going to use it. Right. So, but if it's someone who's older that's watching or browsing the web, then that advertisement becomes more useful. Right. So useful in the sense that the audience is more likely to click on it. So whenever you click on advertisement, the advertisement company gets a certain amount of money, especially when you buy. Okay. So what I'm going to do next now is look at the kind of vision, or kind of more like how the web privacy will look like. But before, also in terms of research, what kind of future work can be done. Before I do that, I do want to maybe step back a little bit and talk about PII. So these are personally identifiable information. So these are pretty straightforward. So things like your name, address, zip code, gender, race, date of birth, and cookie. So this is on the internet, on the web. So your cookies is also a PII now. So if you don't know about it, just knowing your zip code and date of birth is usually enough to identify a person. So that's good that these are PII. So these are things that companies should not be collecting, or if they are collecting it, they have to have a lot of disclosure about that. So what I'm going to go at next is that privacy is not just about those PII. So even if someone does not collect all this PII, what I'm going to tell you in this talk is that they can still identify who you are. Okay, so it's not just your name, but you can infer who it is based on what that person is doing. So I'm going to give you some examples. So if you are a soccer fan or football fan, depending on where you are in the world, I think only the US, they call it soccer. But this is the logo for a popular soccer club called Barcelona Football Club. And so if you go to their website, it probably says that you are a soccer fan, right? Or maybe you like sports, or maybe you live in Barcelona in Spain, right? So that kind of already restricts kind of telling a kind of person you are. Yes, so Barcelona is a big club, so there's probably millions, if not billions, of people who like them. But let's move on. So let's say you find somebody who's going to religious websites. So you can probably infer that that person is a Christian or Catholic or Muslim and so on. Or if that person goes a lot and buys a lot of Nike products, maybe that person is an athlete, or maybe just really into sports or maybe into outdoor activities, trying to be fit, you know. And if you haven't heard of Ashley Madison, so that's a website that encourages married people to have an affair, so to cheat on their spouse. So if you go to Ashley Madison's website, then you either doing it for research or you you're cheating or you're cheating on your spouse, and that also means that you are married. And then finally, if someone finds out that you go on Grindr, that's a social network slash dating app for gay people. So that means that you likely male and gay, or you went there again just for research. So you go to all these websites, right? So if you find each one person going to one of these websites, you can infer some information about that person. Right? So that doesn't really give you the actual person's name, but think about what if you find somebody, you don't know who it is, that went to these 5 websites a lot. So that means that person is likely married, male, gay, likes soccer, especially if Barcelona Football Club, is religious, and also likes Nike products, which means that they might be an athlete or they might like brand names. Right? So if you see that, take a step back and think about, how many people in your life or maybe in the world do you think meets all these check boxes? There's probably not going to be that many, right? So, and these are just 5 websites. Think about all the websites you visit on the internet, right? So what I'm trying to get at is that the collection of all the websites you visit or the people you talk to or things you do on the web, or the collection of that does uniquely identify who you are. Okay, so now next is, you might think, well, why would anybody want to do that? Why does anybody want to, track people, see the kind of person they are, what they're doing on the web? So there are um, two kind of extremes. One is we talk about advertisements, right? So the more a company knows about the type of person you are, the more targeted or the more successful the advertisement is. Right? For example, if we go back to this picture, right? If you know that, you might get advertisement about, tickets to watch a soccer game, or 50% off at Nike shoes, you know, things like that, right? That you're more likely to click on and to buy. So that's the advertisement. And then on the other side, you have government surveillance. So the government or many governments want to, and so government includes, law enforcement or also kind of spying level. So think of uh, GCHQ, NSA, and so on. Those type of big state level agencies, but also local law enforcement as well. Right? So they want to see what people are doing, so that if they do something bad, um, then you want to stop them before they actually do it. So let's say somebody is going to blow up a building, right? So they're terrorists, and you want to stop them before they do that. So you collect a lot of information about that person. Right, so I might say why. So we talk about government. We talked about a little bit about why already, but just to quantify it, a CNBC report from 2018 reported that advertisement was over $100 billion company. And to put that into context, 2 years ago, so I mean 2016, they were predicting that it was only going to be a 60 to 80 billion dollar uh, uh, of advertisement money spent. So you can already see the estimate was way off. So it's now over $100 billion. So this is going to keep increasing. And also that $100 billion is only for web or internet advertisement. So it does not include like newspaper or TV or radio. Although if the radio is online, like a podcast, it probably includes that. And then for government point of view, right? So things like you collect data for use in the future. So that's a PRISM program that was around, if you heard of it, but just to be used in the future in case somebody is going to do something bad or maybe potentially illegal. But it can also be used for censorship, right? You can think like, oh, so let's say if you like comics, so Batman and Superman are both trying to be the leaders of the Justice League, and Superman knows all the supporters of Batman and starts censoring them. So whenever they start searching for Batman, they only get the bad news, and if they start searching for Superman, they get all the good news. So you might think, right? So there's a common comment I get, so what, right? So all this surveillance or tracking is being done. Is that actually a bad thing or a good thing? So some common things you get is, well, you got nothing to hide. You trust the government to always do the good thing, and also it's just advertisements. So I'm going to address each one of them. So getting nothing to hide, I'm going to give the analogy that if you really had nothing to hide, I bet that all of you still have curtains or blinds on your windows. So if you have nothing to hide, why do you have curtains, right? So this is the same as the internet, right? It's not as, so the having curtains is kind of like a personal privacy, so you kind of see it, versus the web, it's very abstract. So I can tell you that hopefully what I've shown so far is that people can find out who you are based on what you do on the web. And they can predict the type of person you are as well. And they can probably predict what you're going to buy, right? Think of Amazon knowing what you want to buy, or like the type of movies you like. Imagine if all that information gets leaked, right? So the type of movies you like, the type of searches you've done, the type of friends you have, all these does say something about you. And then trusting the government, well, you might say the government is out to catch terrorists or criminals, or bad actors. Yes and no. They do that, but they can also be used to censor, excuse me, censor people or censor searches. So the search you do or the things you look for online only gives a good light of the government and other bad things they do. And also about advertisements, well, advertisement is not going to kill you, right? Getting advertisement doesn't affect anything. But what I want to get at is that what if that that information collected by advertisement company gets leaked, or maybe gets stolen by hacker? Think about all the information that person has. Right? So the point is, all these are bad, not good. And then, so how they do it? So we have things like how companies track you. So IP address, web cookies. I think you all know what they are. These are not used that often anymore because people know how to delete the cookies, and also know that you change location often. So think like if you're going, from home to Starbucks to get coffee or to work or to school. Also, more recently, there's been Evercookie, which tries to be a better version of a cookie that tries to restore the cookie using all sorts of different kinds of local storage. Also, so I mentioned earlier that your web browser sends a lot of information to servers. So this is a screenshot from some years ago about the information that my web browser sent whenever I visited the school website, a school website. So I grayed out the actual location, but you can see that um, I was using Mozilla Firefox version 31. So you can see that that was a long time ago. But then, even now, that's still being sent. So I was using Mozilla Firefox 31 on a Linux Ubuntu machine 64-bit. And the language I accept is English US. So that probably says that I'm in the United States. But if you think that this could also be Chinese, French, and so on, so it does reveal information about who you are. And you might think that, well, I'm going to change the user agent information so that nobody can see what I'm using. Because if you think about it, right, so this information, yeah, there might be a lot of people who are using Mozilla Firefox. There are probably not that many people are using Mozilla Firefox version 31.0 on a Linux Ubuntu machine, right? So that reduces who you could be, and also that person also is in the US. So one thing is switching that, but switching your user agent actually could make you more unique because nobody else would have the same user agent as you do. So now, if you haven't heard of PANOPTICLICK, PANOPTICLICK is a website that's trying to see if your browser is safe against tracking. So they do a lot of testing on your web browser, and these are the things that websites can also get. So there are just a few things I'm going to point out. So if Panopticlick can get that information, that means every website can also, web server can also get that same information. So you can see down there's language, which is English US. There's also screen size. So screen size does have, say, information, right? So if you're on a laptop, it's probably going to be a medium-sized screen. If you're connecting to a projector, external projector, it's probably much bigger. Or if you have a smartphone, it's probably going to be smaller screen size. So this does have uses because it helps to render the web page, right? Like if you think about you have a smartphone, the web page looks differently than if you're using computer. You probably don't want to, if you have a smartphone, you don't want to display the desktop or laptop version of that because you have to move the screen around. You can also get your time zone, so that does say where you are. So other things can also get your system fonts, so any fonts you have installed, your language, the platform you're on, the user agent, and also if you have touch support. So that says whether you're on a iPad or tablet or phone, so whether you have to get touch screen or you have a mouse. So that says a lot of information. So again, each one of these is probably not that unique. Think of time zone. If you're in Chicago time zone, there's millions and millions of people who are on the same time zone as you, right? But if you think of your screen size, the time zone, the system for the language, your platform, and your user agent, that's making you more unique. So the more information you have, the more unique that person is. So this is another way to try to kind of track web browsers. So every web browser, so every computer and every web browser would display the same font slightly differently. So this is the font for Arial 20 point. And then each of the rows, so the 13 rows, each of them are showing how that font, so the exact same font, the exact same size, font size, is displayed on different operating systems. And you can see they are slightly different, right? So Windows 1, OS X, and Linux. So for the human eye, maybe it's not going to be too obvious that they are different. But from a computer point of view, right, you can see that it's going to be much more accurate. So even in the same operating system, so think of OS 10, the first line or third line looks different. Actually, the first, second, third, and fourth line. The second and third line looks slightly similar, except one is slightly bigger, but the thickness is slightly different for the first and third line. So even on the same operating system, different machines, they are rendered slightly differently. So it's called canvas fingerprinting. So this kind of tells you who that person is, right? By just rendering a font, how that font is rendered, you know who the web browser, who the laptop is, so who the user is. So a lot of it, so again, a lot of it is not to find out the name of the person, although that'd be great. But you don't need to know the name, right? You just want to track people, see what they're doing on the web, and then give it advertisements, censor them, or if you're doing illegal or questionable things, you can go and arrest them or prosecute them. So this is another example of how an attacker, or could be a server, can find out what websites you have visited in the past. So this can be a JavaScript code that's loaded when you visit a website, or maybe it could be served as an ad. So this is a timing attack. You don't need to understand the JavaScript code, that's fine. But what this is doing is getting the start time, then it's loading this website, and then get the end time, and then get the time difference, so the latency. So if you are logged into example.org/dashboard.php, if you're logged into that website, it will display the site, so it will be pretty fast. If you are not logged into the website, it will probably redirect you to login.php. So that redirection could take, it's fast, it's maybe 100 milliseconds, but that's extra time. Also, if you have visited a website, you could also try to load pictures. So the pictures load faster than in the cache. If they load slower, they are not. So the browser has not visited that website before. And there's other things. There are, a lot of you probably have web browser extension installed. So think of ad blockers, some of you use Rakuten, or like Amazon price tracking extensions. So there was a paper, Xhound, from a few years ago that actually found that browser extension also make you unique. So if you can get a list of web browser extensions, all the extensions you have installed makes you pretty unique, because not everybody will have the exact same set of extensions installed. And then there were also accessibility features, like so there was a way before, now it's been fixed, that you can get the battery life of a phone, and that allows you to track that person, right? So if let's say you have two visitors, two browsers coming to you, one has a battery life of 99%, one battery life of 50%, that tells you they are different people. And then, a minute later, one has a battery life of 98%, the other one's battery life 49%, you know that is, again, the same person. The battery life is just going down. So the same concepts kind of apply for mobile tracking, so if using your smartphone, and also cross-device tracking. So there are ways to track that you're the same person using this laptop and this smartphone. So some ways this can be done for cross devices using audio beacons. So you can have a sound emitted that you cannot hear, so a person cannot hear, but your phone can. And if your laptop and your phone hear the same sound, then you're in the same room. So you're probably the same person. So now let's talk about what you can do, right? So you can have, there's a policy about do not track. So you can send that flag out. Again, this is just a policy. It's actually not enforced. So web servers can ignore you. You can also install tracking blocking tools. I'm going to say that's kind of a arms race, more or less. So you have things like canvas fingerprinting. Those tools try to block them, and then you come up with new ways to still do it, and so on. Or you can also use a private browser. So this is an example of different ways you can be tracked. That's the rows, and then the columns are the browsers. So Firefox and Brave are web browsers, and then other tools like extensions that you can install. So you can see that there's no one solution that check all the boxes, but usually Firefox and Brave are the more privacy conscious or privacy aware web browsers out there. I mean, there are some that do check all the boxes, OES, or most of the boxes, but anyway, so that's in terms of protection against tracking or fingerprinting. And so you might say, so next thing I want to point out is there are some legitimate uses of all this tracking. So for example, banks have started to use it to detect fraudulent logins. So even though you have the right password, right, if you're using a completely different browser than before, they will send you that two-factor authentication by sending you an email, send you a text message. If you've been using the same computer over and over, then you have a pattern, and then they say, oh, that's the same person. So they're less likely to send two-factor, for example, or to verify you further. It's also supposedly being used by games to detect cheaters. So so cheaters can always create new accounts, right? You have an account, you get blocked, you create a new one, and you cheat again to win. But your computer is the same. So if they can fingerprint your computer, then they can block you, even though you have new accounts created. So then how prevalent that is? So there is a long tail, as you expect. So there's been studies a few years ago based on the top 500 most popular sites or the top 1,000 most popular websites. And a lot of them do not have it, but it has been becoming more common. So that could be a future research work, is seeing how many websites actually are using these fingerprinting techniques. And it was also found that some websites use different tracking tools. So they will have multiple fingerprinting sites or tools that are trying to track or fingerprint people. So browser fingerprinting is here to stay. Excuse me. So the point of this talk so far was that you should be concerned about your privacy, and also should think about what if that tracking data set gets leaked, right? So what kind of information can people get about you? So what I want to talk about is now kind of switch gear. So that was fingerprinting you. seeing who you are. So I'm just geared to more the network traffic, right? So let's assume that all communications you do is encrypted, and also is anonymous, meaning that you cannot see who the server is and you don't know who the client is. So I want you to take maybe a minute and think about what can you see. Like if you're on the network, right? So let's say you Comcast or you AT&T, you know you have some client, they're talking to some server, you don't know who they are, but all the communication encrypted. So what you see is you do see the actual messages. You do not see the contents of the messages, but you do see how many messages was sent. You do see the size of each message, and you also see whether the message is from server to client or client to server. Right, so that's the excuse me, that's the metadata for what you can see. You do not see the contents of the message. So what you would see is that you have somebody, you don't know who they're talking to, but they send a message that's in red. They receive a little bit later, they receive some message, and that message they receive is a bit bigger than the message they sent. And then they get a much bigger message right after that, and then they get a smaller message. Then a little bit later, they get another message. Right, so this could be web behavior, right? So you send a web request that is in red. A little bit later, you get the HTML file. Then maybe you download a picture, a JPEG, and then you download the CSS file, and then you get some other file, right? So you download every piece of the HTML page at a time. So if you were to do that by just looking at the network traffic, so the size of the message, the number of messages, and the direction, can you fingerprint web users? So that was some work done from a few years ago, and the answer was yes. So we had 4 different web browsers. So there were 4 different web browsers: Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, and a Tor browser. And with pretty high accuracy, each one of them could be fingerprinted. So Tor was the most private browser, so it has a bit lower accuracy, but Chrome and Internet Explorer were pretty unique. And work was also extended on that to see whether there were JavaScript used, Java, and Flash. So all these was also fingerprintable based only on the network traffic. So going back to this picture, right? Now, so what we're looking at is identifying who the user or who the browser is. What if you go the other way and you want to identify who the website or who the server is? So these are 2 different websites. And what I did was record the network traffic. So again, it's encrypted, it's anonymous, so I don't know who they are. The red the red indicate from client to server, the green is from server to client. And for both websites, I recorded traffic for 1 second only. And the y-axis is the packet size. So you can see both of them start at roughly the same time. They send a request out, they get a response, they send another request, they get some responses. But you can see the figure on the right, there are a lot more messages, so that's why the green line is thicker. And there's also a lot more requests. So there's the one on the right, there's a lot more things going on that website. So if you think about it intuitively, if you go into 2 websites, say Google and YouTube, Google is just a simple site, right? Just text. YouTube has a lot of videos, so you might get a lot more data. So just if you are just at 2 websites to fingerprint, by just looking at the network information, network traffic, you can guess what website you visited. Right, so this is kind of how it would look like. Different websites have different patterns. right? These are just example websites. These are not the actual traffic. This is just an illustration to show that each website is different. So this has been done, right? Let's say you have 1,000 websites and you want to predict which website it is out of that 1,000 website. The accuracy is over 90%, probably closer to 94, 95% accuracy now. So you might say, well, there are not 1,000 websites on the internet. There are millions and millions of websites. So then we switch to a different testing environment where, well, you don't care actually which website you're visiting. You have a small set of monitored websites that you don't want or you want to see the users visiting, say Facebook, Wikipedia, attacker.com. So depending on who you are, that small list of websites could be different. And then you have a bunch of other websites, like a million other websites that you don't care if they visit. So your goal here is to predict whether the network traffic you're seeing is part of that monitored list or not. So just a binary classification, just true or false. And again, for that, there was a high true positive rate, low false positive rate with over 90% accuracy. So how that gives you a high-level view of how you are tracked on the internet, meaning that who you are, and also how they can track you, so seeing what website you're visiting, even though you use all the anonymity tools out there. So all the website, so this picture here, so these were all done on Tor, so which is an anonymity browser. So future impact of what this can be, all this tracking can do is that, so you can track every citizen. So think like minority report type of thing, or 1984 from George Orwell, which can be good, so the law enforcement is going to say that, well, they can catch criminals, but it can also be used for bad, right? So you can censor people, you can censor ethnic groups. That's being done now. And a lot of the data collection that's been done by the U.S. government or by a lot of governments, right? So their claim is that they're collecting all that data to catch bad actors, but there's been some study that's been done, and they found that the number of actors they catch are actually pretty small. Most of the uses have been with people looking at what their wives or girlfriends or spouse or dates are doing online. But maybe some other good things, maybe could predict who you are. So could all this tracking actually be used to eliminate password authentication, right? I'm sure everybody who's watching this talk does not like password. I don't think I met anybody who like, oh, password, yeah, I'm so excited. Right? So if you can predict who you are, then maybe passwords are not needed anymore. So I also want to point out there has been some laws regarding privacy. So GDPR in Europe has been implemented since May 2018. So right now, so if you've been seeing all these banner ads about cookies, opt-in, opt-out, that's due to GDPR. I would say that it's not clear yet how it's going to be enforced, or if it's even possible to enforce it. So that's something that should watch out in the next couple of years, see how that develops. More recently, at the beginning of the year, the California state of California passed out the CCPA, the California Consumer Privacy Act. There's been some rumors that there's going to be a new version of that being pushed into legislation in the coming months, especially during the November election. So that might get changed as well. So it's not clear if those privacy laws actually work yet. So also try to wrap up here is, right, so there's one extreme, say, well, all this data collection, tracking, fingerprinting can be used to find bad actors. On the other side, it can also be used for domestic partner surveillance, right? So there's a lot of domestic abuse out there, domestic violence, right? So this can be used to enable that. Also do unethical things. I think of political, religious, ethnic, personal prosecution based on all this surveillance, all this tracking that can be done. And this is happening on the right. So the things on the right are not just hypothetical things that could happen. These are happening right now. On the left, it's also happening. So fraud prevention that's being used by some banks to do that. But I do want to point out that, right, so this tracking on one hand could have good uses, on the other hand can also be used for other unethical or questionable uses. So just like any technology out there, right, so there has to be some way to make this maybe more private, maybe find some privacy preserving way of tracking people, or maybe not have it centralized, so have a more decentralized aspect to it. So all these, I think, will be good research, future research work on how this can be done. And before I wrap up, since this talk is virtual, just want to point out that due to COVID-19, so this is a picture in, I believe it's South Korea, on where everybody has been. So if you see that picture, it's great. So if you have COVID-19, if you're infected with it, you tested positive, you can find out who are near you and you can contact them and quarantine them or isolate them, right? But hopefully this talk has actually given you a different point of view. You might think, well, what if this was not for COVID-19? What if this was to track citizens of South Korea or any country in general, right? Think of things they can do. They can find out where you've been, when, who you talk to, right? And you can think like, this is good. You can find out terrorists, if you find one criminal, you can see all the community, but think about all the bad things that could also be used based on this data, right? And a lot of it can also be taken out of context, right? So I'm going to leave you at that. And it is an arms race between prevention and detection, right? So you're trying to prevent people from tracking you. And on the other side, you have detecting or trying new tracking tools. And it's usually a trade-off, right? So the point is not that you're super paranoid about your privacy, that you take off the microphone, you take off the camera on your laptop, but that you have that dial between your privacy and your safety/security. I want to point out again, wrap up. This is the most common thing. Are you sure you have nothing to hide? Right? Make your choice of tech. So some technology are more privacy aware or more private than others. There's new regulations coming out, which is good. So I know you all are probably tech people, but you do need the help of lawyers, sociologists. Also, I mentioned there's a lot of unethical uses. Also, be careful what you wish for, right? If you think that government surveillance is good for you, then if you do something bad, they can also find that out. And I do want to thank all the collaborators I worked with that made some of the work I described is part of my research. So I do want to thank all of them. And then thank the funding agencies. And finally, thank you for your time. I hope you learned something useful about privacy. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, or I was told there will also be a Slack channel that I will be on. and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you might have, or if you want more references, or if you want to do research in this, again, feel free to contact me.